replacement shell comes in two pieces like we talked about. There's the top half. You could tell that this is the rear because this is where the battery slots in. And there's the bottom half, and you can see where the battery slots in here as well. And you know that this is the bottom half because you see this cutout here. Well, that obviously is where all the camera equipment goes. So the top half has a clip point right here. You can see the orange. It's got a clip point on the side. See the orange as well. Another clip point here. See the orange. Clip point here, which is just on one side of the battery, and a clip point there, which is on the other side of the battery. So these are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clip points. Now, if you can get those popped, then no problem. The bottom shell half has also 5 clips. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are the females to the males on the top. So once those 5 have been released, the 2 halves will come apart as long as all your screw hardware is out. But we're just showing you how to get the new shell apart first so that you can start your disassembly and assembly. Okay, so here's your bad boy here. You can see that there's no hardware or any screws located on the top for disassembly. So what you're going to do is you're going to invert this. So this whole thing here is an assembly. It's gray, the rest of the body is white. There's 8 screws, 8 Allen screws. This will remove. Be careful because there are 2 wires underneath, and they have to be disconnected before you pull this thing too far away, because otherwise you'll damage the connectors and you're gonna be pissed off. You can purchase a additional wiring kit. So there are a whole bunch of Phantom 4 internal wiring connectors, pretty well everything that you may need in the event that you bugger something up. You can also get a screw kit. That's about $8. And what that does is it gives you a package of each and every kind of screw used in the Phantom 4. There's 8 screws. So this is camera gimbal assembly. Camera gimbal assembly screws. So make sure 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Make sure you label those. You just don't need to get in the wrong screws in the wrong place. Okay, so now we have to be very gentle. We pop the camera assembly out. You might put a screwdriver into an edge, but be really careful. A very fine driver could work for this. There we go. There it goes. Do that all the way around because there are little tabs all the way around that hold the camera into place. And like I said, you can't take it all the way off because there are 2 ribbon cables. You have to be careful. Alright. Alright, that's what we talked about. Hope you can see that. I'm going to make this a little bigger. You can see this guy here. This is this little push clip style. That pops right out. The other guy is held on with a bracket. This guy right here. This is a bracket that holds this piece down. So you got to take these screws out of here. Magnetic driver preferable. Try not to drop your screws in here if you can. Okay, there's your 2 screws. Now, that just pops off. This little guy here, see that? There. And then, there it is. That's all there is to it. So take this guy and put it away. Somewhere. Gently, don't drop it. Okay, we're going to continue now pulling. Actually, you know what we'll do is, that's called the camera. I have a bag here, camera wiring and screws. It's just the screws in the bracket, okay? That goes there. There's 2 white tabs here. These 2 white tabs also have screws. They connect the lower frame or the lower shell to the module. This is the module. So let's take these off. We're going to call these white tab screws, because that's really what they are. White tab screws. Alright. Now, there are antennas. The antennas coming from the 4 legs. So, just a quick little bit of information for you. There's wires that come from each of these legs. These legs have the compasses in them and the associated wiring. And they all come to this point right here. See? And there's an order to them. There's a black wire, there's a light gray, there's a dark gray, and there's a white. So there's 2 screws that hold these wires down. It's an insulated bracket. So let's take the screws out. See it? This one's here. There we go. Okay, we're going to call this antenna leads on receiver, cover and screws. Antenna leads on receiver, cover and screws. So there's 2 screws, and then there is this bracket. Now I was telling you about being insulated. You see the rubber strip there? That's so the metal does not short the leads out. Now that exposes 4 antenna leads. So be really careful taking these leads off, the antenna leads. We talked about the order already. Really gentle. Move these little metal tangs out of the way. Like so. These 2 metal tangs, else the body won't go past. All these plastic lenses have to come out. Okay. Each of these lenses has to pop out. These tabs, they come out. Put them with the lenses. Taking these off uncovers the motor screws. There's 3 per motor. They're fairly tight. Might be easier to crack them first with a Allen wrench. Crack them. Put everything into screw bags so you don't lose them or forget what they do. These are the motor screws. Write down the quantity. Lower shell screws, you got 8 of them. Same size. Like that. Probably have to crack them all. 1. Bad boy over. Collect your screws. Lower shell screws. Don't forget to label your bags. 2, 3. Alright. So now you can start gently prying the 2 halves apart. There's the other clip here, so you got to push on the top and you gently ease that out. That's on the one side of the battery. You got to do the same with the other side. So try and demonstrate here without completely buggering it up. Push on the top, there it is, and gently ease it apart. So okay, we got 1, 2 here. I got number 3 there already. That's apart. Okay, anyway, for now, a total gorilla, after you got the 5 tangs loosened off, just make sure your little metal guys here are out of the way. Okay. And then in the very, very front, you see you got your 2. Try and do this. Your 2 connectors. Push up, bang. I hope you saw that. Okay, and that goes there. There you have it. Your 2 halves are apart. Okay, so the wiring for the motors obviously comes from the motor, runs to the board here, circuit board. There's a black, there's a gray, there's a white. So there's 3 wires per motor. Instead of doing any soldering here with any kind of heat, what we've elected to do is just cut the wires. And you can put splices in there. You could solder the wires together, which is further away. You put some heat shrink on them, that'll be fine. If you ever have to do this again, you can always just open up the splices. So what we've done is we've cut the wires for the motors. Some of the motors go clockwise, some of them go counterclockwise. Just make sure you label them. I've put some numbers on them. So now what you're going to do is here, as you could see, they have been installed, and then they're on little posts, and they just melt the plastic to hold them down. So you have to actually shave off the plastic. And when you shave them off, you end up with something like this. So this is, I've already shaved the one off here, as you can see. Now they just pop up once you've done that. They just pop up. Just be gentle, one on either side. Just remember that the silicone is down, and then you can see that these on the new one are, here's a new one, and you could see that they're just these little plastic pins. On top of the plastic pin, you just have to melt these down with a soldering gun or something like that. So anyway, you have to shave all these guys off. What I use is a X-Acto knife, and you basically are going to slice off the top, just like I'm doing here. So you could see this connector that we just pulled off, this goes to the GPS connector or to the antenna. What we're going to do next is remove, there's four screws that hold the whole assembly down here. This entire assembly is held into the frame, the lower shell, with four screws. There's one here, there's one here, there's one here, and there's one here. So you've got your four corner screws. Sorry, fourth one is right there. And so now what we can do is we can pull the whole assembly away. So there you have it. The GPS antenna is in the frame, or in the shell. So you have this, I guess this would be a reflector or a shield to prevent any interference from the microprocessor circuitry affecting the GPS signal. So now what you have to do is you have to remove this. This is sticky, so there is a glue on the back of it, and you have to remove this entire thing. It's held here with these little tabbies, and this is located as well, and then we can get at the GPS antenna. So we got to pull this guy off. So we're just prying this away from all the edges. And gently pulling it away. There's a grommet there. Let the grommet stay. The cable pulls through, because that is your GPS antenna cable. There we go. This is quite sticky, so make sure you put it face up and get it ready for your other shell. So now you have your GPS antenna. This guy here, you can see the orientation, and it has screws, so you can't really screw it up. So there's 3 screws got to come off. Now we have to remove this antenna. So the 3 screws remove. Just gently pry it up. Okay, so that's it. We have now taken all the components off of the shell. We're going to start installing them on the other shell. So let's get the new shell. Old shell, goodbye. New shell. So you could tell this is the same shell because, and we're using the right side because you can see where the GPS antenna goes. There it is there. So now this one we're gonna fling. Bing! Bye-bye. Now we're gonna start reassembling everything. So you know that the last thing we just took off is the first thing that's going to go back on. That's going to be the GPS antenna. So that just installs like that. Here, have a look. That's what it looks like from the top. And that goes in there. Like so. Install the screws. You notice that there's a 4th hole, but there was no screw installed in that in the old shell. And so there's no 4th screw to install in this one. Okay, so now we have to feed the antenna wire through this bad boy here. So try and make as much of a hole here as possible to make your life easier. Feed the wire through. There's our grommet. And as you know, it will all line up with little tabs. So we need to line up the tabs. Tab, tab. Sticky as heck. So, like so, like so. And don't press it down too hard until you know you have it in the position where it needs to be, because if it's not down flush enough, what will happen is your board will not fit properly in here. So it has to sit down fairly low. Okay, so do that. Okay, so once that's done, as you can see, the grommet is back down, and I've put the flaps over. They stick to the grommet. Here's your GPS antenna cable. That's going to be reattached to the module in a second, and you can see all the edges are down of this deflector or reflector. So just like this, get this wire for the GPS antenna clicked in first, and it just pops in like that. Click. Okay, make sure no wires are stuck underneath, and drop the module back down onto the shell. Once you got your module positioned, now you can put your 4 screws back in. Once you put the screws in, what you want to do is make sure that the screws did seat all the way, is try and push down on the module. If the module is bouncy at any way, then chances are you haven't put your screws in. You see how that's bouncy? If you don't have the screw all the way in, then it will bounce, and if it bounces, that's going to be a loose a chassis, and this whole assembly will be bouncing around in there. You want to make sure the screws are all the way down. Okay, so after you get your module screws back in, you're going to put these guys, as we talked about before, the silicone down, and they go onto these little plastic pins. I don't think it's overly critical how they sit. They just have to be on there flush, and you take a soldering iron and you just gently press down, and you're melting. Basically what you're doing is you're melting the plastic. If you have a chisel tip, all the better. So what you're doing is essentially trying to melt the plastic so that this thing will not fly away. Like that. We have reattached the wires from the controller to the motors. What I've used are splices. They're called Raychem sleeves, Raychem splices. The wires didn't want to solder very well, so we ended up using these sleeves with a heat shrink tube over top. You're going to retwist all these wires and place them back into their grooves or into their associated slots. Now the motor wires have all been routed nicely. Make sure that they're below the bosses so that they won't get pinched. And they are in between the screw holes. So, looking good. We're going to pull the legs off, and there is a cover here that you can pop off and that hides the hardware. There you go. Piece comes right off. Hides the screws. So as you can see, there's a screw here and a screw here. And if you look at the other side, there's a screw here and a screw here. So we got to take those off now. Reassembly consists of putting the gear legs onto the lower shell assembly first, and then you feed the wires through. You feed the wires. There's these 4 wires here that are going to clip to the module, and the 2 ribbon cables that have the 4 wires, and these are on the front, and you'll know where the vision sensors are. That's where the ribbon cables come through, and they connect into their associated ports on the front of the module. So gently start putting this back together as you're making sure that there's no wires that are getting pinched, and you're squeezing it. We're at the point now the 2 halves have clicked together. We can start reassembling, putting the 8 screws back in to the shell. Here, 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 and here. So those are the 8 that'll hold the 2 shell halves together. We can reconnect these wires, and the order would be looking from the sonic sensors down. So we got the black, the light gray, the dark gray, and the white, and there is that little cover that goes over top with the 2 screws and holds all these leads onto the module. You can see our 4 wires are on now: black, light gray, dark gray, and white. Our cover goes on that. It's an insulated cover. You see, that's insulated, and that holds the wires down. So as you can see, I'll just go pop back on here. Great. Now your metal 2 tangies here, they have to rebend into place. At this stage of the reassembly, we can put our lower shell screws in place. There's a total of 8 that hold the bottom shell to the top shell. It's time now to put the camera assembly back on. This is the camera and gimbal assembly. This connector pops into here. And as you recall, this connector pops onto there. And there's a plate that holds this connector down. So let's get those on there now. So that clips into place. Sits on the connector like that, and then you put your connector, your bracket on. Okay. Camera assembly, gimbal, pops back on gently. And once you get it fitted, it is held in place with 8 screws. Okay, once you install your camera gimbal assembly, finish it up, put your motor screws in. And there's 3 per motor times 4, so that'd be 12 of these guys. Make sure they're fairly snug. After your motor screws are in, now your sticky tabs have to go back in. I'm thinking that these guys would help to reduce vibration, but also make sure that the motor screws don't fall out. So that's pretty important. And once you got all your tabs in, you're going to put your light lenses back. You see there is a notch out here, a large notch that lines up with this notch right here, and it just pops back into place like so. And do that 4 times. Notch. On the opposite side, you have your light doodads. I guess these are also a kind of a reflective lens. Hallelujah. So look over your bags for spare parts. Make sure there's not something that you omitted reinstalling. Good, just check all the bags, make sure there's no screws in there. At this point, you are ready to reinstall the battery and the SD card and fire it up, and you're going to find out how good a job you did in the next minute and a half.